and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. And the Lord will create on every dwelling place in Mount Zion and upon her assemblies a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night, whereupon all the glory shall be a defense, and there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime from the heat.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. I'm going to pre-record this today because the internet does not provide a good enough connection. And we're going to work on a permanent solution for that. But, we have a limited live audience, and we'll just keep trying to do it when we can, but this will have to be uploaded. I do like doing it live. It feels a little different, but actually, I think my mind is sort of adjusted, and this feels as live as anything, because it is. There's always a delay, even if it's a few seconds. When I make a mistake, it happens, and then it goes out, and it can't be retrieved. It can't be taken back. And that's not a bad way to exercise things, because, every idle word men speak, they should give account thereof in judgment. I'm just glad that through the power of Christ, I've passed from judgment to life, and therefore I don't have to fear such a awesome judgment against me. unless perhaps I was harsh in my judgment. But God give us grace and mercy, and we'll know the right thing. I like a crane. All right, now we're going to read the whole chapter again. I think I'm going to keep doing it like this, and, I think that's a good thing. In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death. And Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, came unto him and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Set thy house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. And Hezekiah turned his face toward the wall and prayed unto the Lord, and said, Remember now, O Lord, I beseech thee how I have walked before thee in truth, and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. Then came the word of the Lord unto Isaiah, saying, Go and say to Hezekiah, Thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will add unto thy days 15 years. And I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city. And this shall be a sign unto thee from the Lord, that the Lord will do this thing that he hath spoken. Behold, I will bring again the shadow of the degrees, which is gone down in the sundial of Ahaz, 10 degrees backwards. So the sun returned 10 degrees, by which degrees it was gone down. The writing of Hezekiah king of Judah, when he had been sick, and was recovered of his sickness. I said in the cutting off of my days, I shall go to the gates of the grave. I am deprived of the residue of my years. I said, I shall not see the Lord, even the Lord in the land of the living. I shall behold man no more with the inhabitants of the world. Mine age is departed, and is removed from me as a shepherd's tent. I have cut off like a weaver my life. He will cut me off with pining sickness. From day even to night wilt thou make an end of me. I reckon till morning, that as a lion, so will he break all my bones. From day even to night wilt thou make an end of me. Like a crane or a swallow, so did I chatter. I did mourn as a dove. Mine eyes fail with looking upward. O Lord, I am oppressed. Undertake for me. or undertake for me. Better. What shall I say? He hath both spoken unto me, and himself hath done it. Hath done it. I shall go softly all my years in the bitterness of my soul. O Lord, by these things men live, and in all these things is the life of my spirit. So wilt thou recover me and make me to live. Behold, for peace I had great bitterness. But thou hast in love to my soul delivered it from the pit of corruption, for thou hast cast all my sins behind thy back. For the grave cannot praise thee, death cannot celebrate thee. They that go down to the pit cannot hope for thy truth. The living, he shall praise thee, as I do this day. The father to the children shall make known thy truth. The Lord was ready to save me. Therefore we will sing my songs to the stringed instruments all the days of our life in the house of the Lord. For Isaiah had said, let them take a lump of figs and lay it for a plaster upon the boil, and he shall recover. Hezekiah also had said, what is the sign that I shall go up to the house of the Lord? And I indicated last time my slight confusion on that, meaning I'm not sure exactly when that verse happens, because he had said it. Okay, when? Before his prayer? Before Isaiah came and spoke to him? After the plaster of figs? Like, meaning he had taken a lump of, because Isaiah had said, obviously it's before the writing where he recovers, because he had the writing after he recovered. Well, whatever. It's not critical a question. As I read it, I was thinking again about the way that a passage like this, and I thought, and these are the kind of things I think it's important to think about from time to time, because, when you hold a position that other people disagree with, which most things have their opponents. I mean, there's still people who believe in a flat earth, and I've had, they do. And there's people who believe men went to the moon and people who don't believe men went to the moon, right? There's people who believe in predestination, and there's people who believe that predestination is something else, or they believe in a different definition. I hesitate to say they don't believe in predestination or election, because of course those things are biblical terms right out of the King James, right? Election, predestination, that kind of thing. And also things about like God's foreknowledge and being all-knowing. You take all that into consideration, then when you have people who it's not that they don't believe in predestination, they would say, or election, but they do believe in free will. And that's because free will plays an important part in their theology, actually. Maybe not theology, but in some part of their religious thought. A lot of the justification for the basis of everything. Like the explanation of evil for them is human free will. That doesn't explain things like earthquakes, volcanoes exploding in your face, that kind of stuff. Doesn't explain that sort of evil. Death itself. I mean, you could say, well, death itself is from sin. I guess that's because I always assume that we know that death actually existed before man was created. Because that's some people get, I remember when I told someone that, they were like, what? And I'm like, no, well, I always thought it just meant like that death entered the world through man, by being two men. But maybe I'm wrong about that. I just don't think that that's... Well, and plus, with the age of the earth, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But in the sense of, here's the thing. If a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to see it, does it really happen? You know what I mean? And so in a sense, if there's no observers, if there's no one conscious, able to recognize death, to know what death is, who has taken, without that, without that, Has death truly come into the world as a force of evil? Like when a cat kills, it doesn't do so out of any evil intent or anything like what, even though they kill for pleasure. No one counts the cat to be evil, though it is a pretty evil beast. You know what I mean? It is. And so I always call my dogs, like my dogs, well, especially the little one. She's a vicious little murderer, and she wants to kill. And she's adorable, but it's part of our nature. So I guess as I'm bringing all that up, free will in this context. Yeah, let's see here. Where was I? Okay. Because God seems to change his mind, right? And he does, but I say seems to. I'm leading you with the evidence there. I'm already... But, okay, and the reason I brought it up to begin with is this. As I read it, I think to myself, that seems apparently, obviously, to contradict certain notions about everything being foreordained. I mean, like that his death was going to be right there. God had said you will die, and not live. So, and it seemed pretty immediate. It's an interesting thing. It almost makes me think of like Christ's coming. They say the Lord is coming. His coming is imminent. That sense of like in the New Testament, that they were expecting him to return in their lifetimes, as people will say, and he left that impression. If you read the Gospels, you feel like that's what's supposed to happen. The apostles all feel like that's what's supposed to happen. He's supposed to come back right away. And here, Hezekiah, he's going to die right away. That's what everything you could say. Oh, technically, he did not say when, but this set the house in order. This is pointing right at it. It's going to happen now. And then it doesn't. And I excused it quick. I'm only going over it again because it came into my mind as I don't want to be too quick to dismiss things like that with easy explanations. We have an apparent free will because we are created that complicated, and we don't have access of knowledge to what God knows as far as that goes. Because we behave as though through free will, but we're also very bound up in who we are. Like the things we choose are our choices. You know what I mean? And God knows our choices, all of them, before we do it. And so then this thing with Hezekiah, it makes it seem, in my mind, I'm like, I have to do this trick where I look at it and okay, well, God has to be kind of shamming a bit with Hezekiah, or maybe there's a better word. Because he's telling him he's going to die, but in his ultimate knowledge, he knows, you're going to pray to me, and I'm going to add 15 years. And that it can be as simple as that, as far as an explanation, but it sort of makes you wonder, why would God do that? You know what I mean? Why would he not just, I can see why he would do it to an individual, but why would he show us himself doing that? It just seems, like I said, it doesn't fit in well with the idea of predestination, and also the notion of, and these are the kind of passages where people who believe in free will say, human free will matters, and God does not really know what men are going to do. And so things get changed and they get altered along the way. It's this sort of open-ended view of reality, meaning that it's all unfolding before us, and even God himself is sort of watching this sort of open-ended thing happen. But the thing is, it's not an open-ended thing. There's a conclusion that's already been foreordained. And, you could say, well, within that framework, we have some leeway. And I guess maybe you could say that could God create the world in such a way that it had sort of bumper barriers that kept it along the general path it's supposed to go? But that's, And what does he do that by constantly interfering to keep things back? Because my view is that things are just unfolding as God had made them to unfold from the beginning. And from the beginning he ordained that he himself would interact with man at specific times, at whatever time of his choosing. He specifically interacted with me and messed with my view of reality when I received the Holy Spirit. And in 2005, I always talk about it. It's like it interferes with my view of reality. That's baked into the cake, and I think also your reaction. But the Lord here frames it as though, it's not that way. No, I'm adding. See, he didn't say, see, I have already given you 15 more years. Or no, I didn't mean you were going to die right now. I mean in 15 years. But it's important that he do these things. And you could say that, as a counterfactual, if he hadn't prayed, then he would have died. And if he was the sort of man who would, let's say, go into a rage against God, why not? That's a possible response that a man might have. That's not, I don't think that's how I would respond, but that people get angry with God like the Assyrian. He said, I know you're going in and you're coming out. I know you're rising up, and you're laying. I know everything about you. I know all about you and your rage against me. And see, he is the juxtaposition to this. He is the other side, cut off early. Assassinated by his sons. Though Hezekiah is not going to live to be a very old man. But he'll reign for anything about it. He'll reign in Jerusalem for a long time. That's because from 25 and then 14 years and 15 years is 29. But he'll die a young man at 54. And that's perhaps the reason why it doesn't, I don't know, because I don't even think he has an heir yet, and he might die while his son is young. Because the succeeding kings are not as good as Hezekiah until we get down to, I believe, Josiah. Well, there's interesting stories in there in the kings in between. I used to, hold on a second here. Okay. Anyways, I want to just poke at that again. Because whenever I have if I feel like I detect a weakness, I don't like to run away from it. It's not necessarily a thing to convince people. I'm not, that's not the point. It's the point is to honestly convey what I understand. And, because you can make up your own mind. You say, I don't like that explanation. But it requires an explanation. How that in chapter 37, he knows everything. I did it. Hast thou not heard long ago how I have done it, dude? I did it. Of ancient times, I formed it. I brought it to pass. You do this, and I say that. That's how it works. I almost said, brother. That's how it works. God says, and men do. He did it a long time ago, man. He set it up. That's what he told the Assyrian. What about this? Well, he doesn't say that to him because he turned his face to the wall and spoke to the Lord. Because the Assyrian was shaking his fist at Jerusalem and saying, don't think that God can deliver you, But Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord in humbleness. Because he's sick. He just got delivered from the king of Assyria, and now he's sick. And he could be like, oh, woe is me. Where is the Lord when I need him? Where is God when I need him? And he weeps, but not in that sense. He said, I meant in the sense of being like angry. Where is God when I need him? God delivered me then and then and then. People get angry at God. I'm trying to remember if I've ever really been angry with God. Maybe a little bit. But it doesn't go far because I always just turn it back on myself. It's like I can't be angry with God. It doesn't make sense to me. I've wanted to be, I think, once or twice. or not. I was angry. I wasn't angry at God, but I was angry and talking to God about how unhappy I was about some things. But I wasn't actually angry at God himself. I was angry at my situation and pleading with God. But, I don't know. No, not, I guess there's a different kind of spirit. There's a lot of angry spirits in which people pray. You read the Psalms. There's some, like the as we talked about when we did the Psalms, the Imprecatory Psalms, the ones where they curse people. Lord, destroy them utterly. Those kind of prayers exist. I've prayed about, not for, I've had, like, the enemies need to be destroyed. And they can be destroyed either by, it doesn't have to be like, oh, they die. They can go away. They can be converted. There's all kinds of things that can happen with enemies, if as according to the Lord wills. All right. We were going to pick it up at verse 14. We still are. And we're going to probably still finish this chapter. So he's talking about while he was praying to the Lord, like a crane or a swallow, so did I chatter. Swallows make an interesting kind of chattering noise when they go beep, 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 beep. At least our swallows. I assume the ones in Europe are not that different. Whatever. But they make a kind of chattering thing. And I usually think of that. It sounds to me like I was weeping and like kind of blubbering in my weeping. Like, your jaw gets all shaky sometimes, if you have it in the raw emotion of certain moments. And, not anybody. Some people are hard. They've got the jaw of iron and the heart of steel, and they don't have, or a heart of ice, whatever. And for those people, I say, well, good for you. I'm glad, but Hezekiah is a man of passion, and he feels deeply his own mortality. I did mourn as a dove. Mine eyes fail with looking upward. And looking upward, my eyes are just tired. I can, looking up, Lord. I am oppressed, undertake for me. Now, there's something I want to look at, and my internet is working, but it's super duper slow. And so I just need to make sure, we go along for the ride. Here we go. Browse internet mode. Boom. Boom. Okay. 14. Like a crane or a swallow, so did I chatter. I did mourn as a dove. My eyes fail with looking upward. Undertake. So I want to look at that. And oppressed. What is the meaning of oppression? Oppression, distress. I think distress is probably a better translation in this sense. Feminine oshek, which is anguish. So oppressed. Oppressed is a weird word. I don't know why they still... Oppression, distressed. It's only used here. That's interesting. It's not particularly helpful. Feminine. This is the feminine of oshek. Okay, this is used much more often. So that's the feminine of... I don't know why. Feminine is just the gender of the words in language. If there's a gendered language. We don't really have gendered words in English. We're gender neutral. Noun, masculine, oshek. Oppression, extortion. Injury, fraud, subjectively distressed. Concretely unjust gain, I think that actually the one... I still think, though they can mean all these things, cruelty, extortion, I really think in this context, distress makes the most sense if it has that shade of meaning. Redeem me from the oppression of man. Now that's from Psalm 119. Yeah, because here, this masculine version of this word is definitely trust not in oppression, is not distress. Extortion, which he took violently away, or the thing which he had deceitfully gotten. Yeah, the context of this word really means oppression, extortion. Yeah, these are very strong. But I guess because it's the feminine here, maybe that's why it makes it, maybe that's, I don't know. I'm not going to guess linguistically, but distressed. I mean, well, the only reason is because the word oppressed sounds like more like that stuff, like you're being criminally mistreated. You know what I mean? That's what, when we think of oppression, we think about people being oppressed actually by government. But it's the same kind of criminal mistreatment that's being alleged. There's a criminal mistreatment of people. But of course, Hezekiah, that's why I don't like that translation, because Hezekiah isn't being oppressed by God or by man. He is being oppressed by this disease. So, and also by death hanging over him. So, that's where he's directing his thoughts of oppression. And it's not like, I guess I feel like that word is so overused. I'm oppressed. That's the we even have the oppression Olympics. I'm just kidding. Well, they talk about that because it's like you want to, in the oppression Olympics, you have to have the most disadvantages. Quote unquote disadvantages. Let's say that. It's like, oh, I've got a disadvantage. I'm not the right race for whatever. It's there's no. It's like, oh, I've got a mental issue. I'm oppressed. I mean, we've taken oppression and like made it into like, it's like, it's funny because it gets down to skin color because it's something so thin. It doesn't make a lot of like. I'm oppressed because I look different. How is it? How are you being oppressed? Well, you can't see it. It's just built into the system. Nobody's actively doing anything. The overuse of that word kind of ruins it. I don't like reading it because it sounds weird in that passage. All right, at least to me. All right, so Arab. To take on pledge, to give in pledge, exchange. Just all the uses. To become surety, guarantors, surety, guarantor. A lot of times, make bargain. This is a technical term, a legal term. To take on pledge or to give in pledge. You know what I mean? Depending on, see how it says with the accusative, it means take on pledge. And I want to know which one. See, here we go. Isaiah 38, that's where we are. And so that would be in the accusative case. To give in pledge with the accusative of thing is there to exchange in trade with the accusative of cognate, boy. And the different form, the reciprocal, imperative, have fellowship with. See, there's a lot, share in. It can all mean different things. But here, it means to take on pledge. It means be my guarantor. It's like when you have a loan, the cosigner sort of guarantee, it's kind of like a cosigner in a loan where someone is also responsible for it, except this is a little more powerful than that. It means he is going to give assurance for Hezekiah. Yeah, like in this sort of debt issue. Like he is sick, he is dying, and he's saying, Lord, help me pay my debt. Because, like he says, you've cast all my sins behind your back. Guarantee, save me from my just, he knows he must die. He's not going to blame God. The Lord delivered the city for him. You know what? Dying of sickness compared to dying at the hands of Sennacherib? Hezekiah knows he could be facing a gruesome death right now. But he's sick. And he's dying. But he's not being dragged through the streets of Nineveh. So undertake, a little weird, underwrite, whatever. Be surety for me. Be, guarantor of my debts. Because God, the promise of the Lord, like I said, Lord, I have followed you. I'm sorry, not followed, but the words he used were walked before you in truth. With a perfect heart. What shall I say? He hath both spoken to me, and himself hath done it. So there he says, he has done it. He did it. He spoke to me, and he did it. And he notice, like I said, he spoke to me and said, hey, you're going to die and not live. And he's like, oh no, I'm going to die. And then he's like, Lord, please, I don't want to die. And he says, I've added your days 15 years. Now, he did it right then, or had he done it from the beginning? I don't know if I know or Hezekiah knows, but he knows that God has done it. In a sense of that it's accomplished. We can take that same faith to know that Jesus, because he laid his life down for us, and that if we put our faith in him, we would be saved. That's also accomplished. It's done. Now we need to live it out. He's had 15 years added to his life, but his life is still at that spot it was where he was dying. So now he's got to go live 15 years and continue to walk before the Lord in truth with a perfect heart. It's not like the burden goes away. You have to live. What shall I say? He has spoken to me himself. I will go softly all my years in the bitterness of my soul. I want to look at those words. What are those words all about? Go softly, especially. And in the bitterness of my soul. Go softly. Bitterness of soul. My soul is not finished. All right. Perhaps to move slowly. Oh, great. There's only 2 references. Okay. Huh. Wow. The Psalm 42. I'm going to definitely look at that. Isaiah 38. There is this, I will wander about. I will wander, perhaps to move slowly. And then they try to... I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, they're talking about a camel. Lead slowly. To lead slowly, as in procession. To walk, I like this. To walk deliberately. As in at ease, or as in procession. I'm going to say, I will proceed with caution. Because that's what it also sounds. That's kind of how I feel like it. Like, I will go softly. Like, immediately, that's what my mind thinks. It's like, okay, he's going to be very careful. That's how, go softly things. Slowly, softly, they're both the same. Because it's hard to go soft without going slow. Oh, I don't want a parallel Bible. Can I just have, just give me Psalm 42 with the King James. Does this just bump me right there? Oh, as the deer pants for the water. That's the psalm it comes from, huh? And it's verse 4. When I remember these things, I pour out my soul in me. For I had gone with the multitude. I went with them to the house of God. The word went there. That's the one. From the, that's where it's coming from. I went with them to the house. So it's not I went, I proceeded. I promenaded. I went softly. Wait a second. There it is. I went softly with them to the house of God, with a voice of joy and praise, with the multitude that kept the holy day. So here's the thing. I notice he's got soul mentioning to me. My tears have been my meat day and night, while they continually say to me, where is thy God? And also notice this. 2, my soul thirsteth for God, for the living God. This is Psalm 42 for you who are not watching. My soul thirsteth for God, for the living God, when I shall come and appear. When shall I come and appear before my God? What did Hezekiah said? When shall I go up to the house of the Lord? When shall I go up to the house? That's interesting to me, because it's like the word that is only used there is also used here. As the deer panteth after the water brook, so my soul panteth after thee, O God. My soul thirsteth for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? My tears have been my meat day and night. That's my food. I eat tears. While they continually say unto me, where is your God? Where is your God? Imagine Hezekiah is the leader. And not everyone agrees with the strategy that Isaiah is telling him to take, which he obeys what the Lord tells him to do. You can bet in his house there were people who didn't agree. Shebna, possibly one of them. That's why he got demoted, probably. Wanted to do something different. And just also the feeling that you question yourself. And sometimes you project that on other people also. I know I do. Where I question myself, my own judgment. Did I make the right decision? Does everyone around me think I made the wrong decision? After I've made it, it's easy to judge. It's easy to sit back in judgment when someone's made a decision and say, oh, they decided wrong. After the fact. What about when it was time to decide? Were you there? Do you know what had to go into that decision? Often not. Remember when I remember these things, I pour out my soul in me, for I had gone with the multitude. I proceeded with them to the house of God. I'm going to say proceeded. With the voice of joy and praise, with a multitude that kept holy day. Why art thou cast down, O my soul? Why art thou disquieted in me? Hope thou in God, for I shall yet praise him for the help of his countenance. O my God, my soul is cast down within me. Therefore will I remember thee from the land of Jordan, and the Hermonites from the hill Mizar. Deep calleth unto deep, and the noise of thy water spouts. All thy waves and thy billows are gone over me. Yet the Lord will command his loving kindness in the daytime, and in the night his song shall be with me, and my prayer unto the God of my life. I'm going to continue reading this psalm because I think it's very insightful into what Hezekiah is thinking. I will say to my God, my rock, why hast thou forgotten me? Why go I mourning because of the oppression of the enemy? As with swords in my bones, mine enemies reproach me, while they say daily unto me, where is thy God? Why art thou cast down, O my soul? Why art thou disquieted within me? Hope thou in God, for I shall yet praise him, who is the health of my countenance and my God. Now, like when you listen to this song, what he's saying is, I'm down all the time, and he's rebuking himself. And sometimes that's necessary. I'll confess, I have to do that all the time. I have to do that all the time. Not all the time, not literally all the time, but metaphorically all the time. I have to do it all the time. Whenever I get down, I got to do it. And I get down that, probably more frequently than average person. It's just part of my personality. Also, I got a lot of high expectations and stuff, and it's like I always feel like, I want to meet them. But it gets high. Sometimes things are too high for me. I feel like I cannot. I'm weary with looking up, so I get it. I want to do the Lord's will. I will say to my rock, why hast thou forgotten me? I don't know. I know God hasn't forgotten me. But the general, but you know what I mean? But here's the thing. You might feel forgotten. I don't usually. There were times when I did. Now, ever since I received the Holy Spirit and the power was, I know God hasn't forgotten me. I just feel like, this trial is sore, O Lord. And it's like, and mostly I'm frustrated with myself. Because I know what is causing me to fail at anything is me. Now I can say, well, why don't you help me, Lord? But it's like, the Lord has helped me. You know what I mean? He's helped me just enough. And all I need to do is turn my face to the wall and pray, and all will be made right. It can be as simple as that, but it's not always that simple. Sometimes God has things for us to do. Okay? But you see the sorrow here, the soul being cast down. That just seems to speak so much to me, similar to what he's saying here. Back in Isaiah 38. I will go softly all my years. I will proceed deliberately. You know what I mean? In the bitterness of my soul. In the bitterness knowing, because we didn't look at bitterness. I just want to see if there was anything, amiss there. Oh wait, I don't want to do it without showing you guys what I'm doing. There we go. Bitterness. Adjective, substantive, mar or mara. Oh, bitterness, bitter. Okay. Looks pretty bitter. Literally or figuratively. Yeah, so it's just like our word, bitter. Or pretty much. It's probably a good trend. Nobody seems to think that there's any, even in the literally of water, like bitter water, of cry, a bitter cry, bitterness of soul. Bitter is a concept. It's a basic concept. You think like there's sour, sweet, bitter, different flavors. All right, where is my? Oh, I want to go back to Isaiah here. All right. Bitterness of my soul. So, because it's like life is sometimes bitter. It is. It can be bitter because, like I said, because in the end he fights and he still must succumb. He still must succumb. But he's like, I'm gonna be careful with my life. I'm going to walk carefully all those years in the bitterness of my soul. And I suppose, because like that, like if he hadn't added that, it wouldn't be a difficult verse. I find it difficult because it's like, what are you so bitter about, oh my soul? And I think that's what it's like. That's how he's feeling. Like in that psalm. Why are you cast down? Because he's like, I can't help but be broken in this somewhat. A somewhat broken man. Not that God can't heal me, but it's like, but I'm changed by it. That's what I think he's saying. I'm changed. I'm a changed man. I'm going to proceed with caution. With regards to what? Well, remember, in the psalm we were reading, they were going up to the house of God. So this word for proceed, go softly. See, the only other reference we have is connected to the temple. And they're saying in Aramaic there was a similar word that had something to do with like leading camels in a procession or something like that. Whatever. Or it was used of camel procession or whatever. The way a camel goes. Because they go kind of slow. And deliberately. Or that's the way it looks. I mean, I'm going to be mindful of God. Knowing that life is short. That's the bitterness of life. It's short. All you work for, it's, he gives mindful of children because of the father to the sons. By these things men live. I think what he's saying is, because like all this stuff goes right up from, he said, the cutting off of my days, I shall go to the gates of the grave, I shall behold man no more. We had said all that. My life, cut off my life. Man lives by knowing he shall die. By being, you don't live your life just pretending like it's going to go on forever. Though sometimes people act like that. Your life is limited. There's only so much you can do with it. How should you proceed? Well, one thing, you should live knowing these things. Men live by the bitter thoughts of their own death. As far as I think that's what he's saying. Or what is he about to say? Well, I'll tell you what. It does say better to go to the house of mourning to the house of mirth. Because the mourning and such things, what he's saying is, he looks at this as like the way that his heart is turned towards God. Through thinking on death and meditating and realizing his own mortality, and then he's completely dependent on God to live. And I think that's really the idea, is that knowing that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Like, that's how we live. Right? Thou shalt die and not live. I will die and not live. I remember I said when I first got to that verse, I feel like it's almost like an axiom for life. Set your house in order because you will die and not live. I've often thought, like, what if I die right now? What'll be left behind? What'll people find as they sort through my refuse? And it means something to me. I want to leave a clean mess behind. You know what I mean? A morally clean mess. I don't want people to go, a surprising thing to find here. I don't want anybody to have any surprises. I want to leave cleanly. And all these things is the life of my spirit. My life is bound up in this now, because this whole experience and then being brought to the brink of death. I mean, the thing is, I've mentioned many times that when I first turned my heart to the Lord was when I thought I was going to die. You know what I mean? It's that waking you up to the reality. It's like, I don't just get, I was a child up to that point, really. That was like I remember when I came back from college, my dad said he thought my son was a man. And it was like that, actually. I went away a child with childish thoughts. I came back a man with a man's thoughts. My mind was directed towards God and towards life and death and serious things, as opposed to the stupid things I was interested in prior to that. That's the life of my spirit. Yeah, I almost died, and God made me to recover and made me to live. That's my life. I was gonna die. I was dead and I'm alive. Right? I once was lost, now I am found, just like the song. I was dead and now I live. I was blind and now I see. I was sick and you made me to recover and made me to live. I saw myself. I was sick. I see all mankind, their sickness, the sin that clings to them, the sin that destroys our civilization. The more I think of it, there's reasons why there are strong taboos against certain things. Because they are civilization destroying. That's what the story of Sodom and Gomorrah really says about. And it's not just about the sexual component, which I've come to see is actually kind of minor. Because even if they meant when they said bring the men out that we may know them, bring them out that we may know them. Let's say that was just literal. They weren't even talking about sex. They just like, hey, who you got in your house? Who is that? Do they have COVID? Are they under quarantine? Do they have their vaccination? That's the kind of world. That's the world of Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, and in her was every filthy abomination too. But these were thy sins, Sodom: pride, fullness of bread, abundance of idleness, and abominations. Yes, indeed. But see, that's what those things breed. A proud race. I wrote in my song about America that it's a proud race of men that love freedom. But proud men breed rebellious children. It's true. Man's got to be humble too. But, it's not that, there aren't, like I've said, there are certain kinds of pride, in a different sense, not in personal pride, but in that feeling you have, like when you see your child walk, you feel glad. They reached a milestone. They've accomplished something. That joy in someone who you love making an accomplishment is often also called pride. Like if I was to say, I'm proud of my God. I'm not ashamed of him is what it really means. And so in the opposite of ashamed, I'm not just not ashamed. So what is that? Is that pride? So there is, I remember because it's a question to me, it's very important because my dad was always when I was raised, pride was bad and all bad. That's why he didn't like when Sesame Street would tell you to take pride in your work or anything. 'Cause even though that's, taking pride in your work. Well, whatever you do as unto the Lord. That's really what they're talking about. I don't think they're talking about, hey, if you do a good job, you need to just puff yourself up with your accomplishment and just tell yourself you're the greatest thing ever. That's kind of pride is definitely inwardly directed. That's what I would say is like inwardly directed pride is a sin. But outwardly directed pride in terms of putting care into the things you do as if they're meaningful. I don't know if that's exactly pride, but that's a good thing, not a bad thing. To put, to do what they call take pride in your work is not a sin in any way, shape, or form. To take pride from your work is maybe a bad thing. You mean taking it into yourself. But if you put that into the thing and say, look at this thing I have made, as long as you don't turn it into a god, I guess, right? Because that's the work of men's hands becomes a god to them. That's another reason. And there's a careful line there to walk. I tell you what. Pride goes for a fall, So it's funny, anything we call pride is got to be handled with care. You shouldn't become too proud of your children, in other words. Like, you get, oh, my child, it's just too, don't live through them. You live your life, let them live their life. Not that you shouldn't, But what I'm saying is sometimes parents live vicariously through their children, and that's not healthy. But you should take an interest in what they do, but for their sake. To build them up, not to build yourself up. I take an interest in my children's accomplishments for their sake, not for my own. And not for, my child. It's like, well, they're my child, and I want to make sure they do well. So I see to that. Being attentive to good things. It's not pride. That's why we have words like diligence. You're supposed to be diligent. Eager. That's a good one. When in a good thing. We could be diligent in evil. Some people are. Thou wilt recover me and make me to live. Behold, for peace I had great bitterness. Because he was looking for peace. And all the trouble that came with it, the Assyrian. And boy, in the midst of that, when they were yelling, don't let God deceive you. He can't deliver you. That was like, hard to listen to, especially because he couldn't do anything about it. He had to totally trust in the Lord. And boy, that was probably rough. But he didn't back down from following the Lord's commands. You know what I mean? Despite all his feelings, whatever feelings, bitterness, it means it's like it was hard. It makes me think of like in the book of Revelation where it says, I ate the book, and in my mouth it was sweet as honey, but it made my belly bitter. The little book. The word. That's why I equated this to the word of God a moment ago. Remember I said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Remember in the other psalm it said, I drink tears for my meat. I have bitterness. And it has something to do with what God's doing. I wanted peace, and to obtain it, I had to go through all this bitterness. For peace, I had great bitterness. That's the price he had to pay. Sometimes we have to pay that kind of a price. Like when the Lord was getting ready to depart, he said to Peter, when you were young, you went where you want and you went, did what you want. But when you're old, they'll take you and they'll lead you where you would not want to go. And he sort of did this reversal. And he said, and it says there in the note, in the actual scriptures, it notes, he said thus signifying, and I paraphrase it, signifying the manner of death with which he would glorify God. In other words, he's forgiven Peter for denying him. He has, received him again in love and given him additional commands and retained him as an apostle instead of denying him. He that denies me before men, will I deny before my Father which is in heaven. He could have done that to Peter because Peter, I deny you. You denied me in my moment of trial. You denied me. Deny in a moment of fear is not the same as betray in a moment of greed or of fear. But even so, it is a kind of betrayal, right? But because of where it came, whatever, the Lord had forgiveness for him. But Peter went out and wept bitterly before that. But he says, but he tells him in the end, like, this is how you're going to die to glorify God. And Peter, that, you think about it, it's like that in the end, this is what's going to happen. It's like, I'm going to heroically come and rescue you, Peter? No. You're going to walk off the water into the sunset? No. By report, he was crucified upside down. He was crucified, actually, and they say he requested to be crucified upside down. I can't imagine requesting either, but whatever. I hope he died fast. But then again, precious is the suffering of his saints. So for peace I had great bitterness, but thou hast in love to my soul delivered it from the pit of corruption. For thou hast cast all my sins behind thy back. The pit of corruption refers to the grave, the place where the body corrupts, the pit. I didn't know what the word there is. I say we're at 57 minutes. Man, I gotta say, that's all right. Well, we're going slow. All right. Well, I think we're gonna start at verse 17 tomorrow. And then continue from there. Because there's too much I want to say. I think I want to just make this comment. I could make a 2-minute comment. I'd like to spend more time on it. Because I'd like to look at this word pit. The grave, that would probably be Sheol. There's words we want to look at and talk about a little bit. But we'll definitely get into chapter 39 tomorrow. No, we're not in a rush, right? So, thanks for joining me in this study. I'll be back again tomorrow. Like I said, if not live, we will do this again because until I can get a reliable internet connection. It used to be semi-reliable. I would remember not missing days except for when there was there's no thunderstorms. There's a tiny bit of clouds. And I don't know what's wrong, but we'll figure it out. Thanks for joining me. Blah, blah, blah. See you tomorrow.
And shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. And the Lord will create on every dwelling place in Mount Zion and upon her assemblies a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night, whereupon all the glory shall be a defense, and then